Hello, and welcome back to the Michigan State Wealth Management Association podcast. We are back with another episode of the Summer Rewind series, where we get to upload previous favorites for you to enjoy. We look forward to seeing you this fall with new episodes. Until then, enjoy these classics.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the WMA podcast. My name is Hannah Lakian, and I will be the host for today. We have an amazing episode planned where joining us is Melissa Joy, president of Pearl Planning, an all-female client-focused wealth management firm based in Dexter, Michigan. Melissa has worked in the planning and investments world for more than 20 years and is a CFP professional and certified divorce financial analyst. Pearl Planning was founded in 2018 and continues to serve clients across the country. Melissa's philosophy on investing is anything is possible when you are able to add focus and persistence. In today's episode, we will talk about Melissa's journey of entering the financial planning industry and how she came about starting Pearl Planning. We discuss advice regarding strategies when communicating with clients, resources to help in your career, how to build and establish your network, and characteristics to make a successful advisor, how to pass the CFP exam, and so much more. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is Hannah Lakian, host of the WMA podcast. We have an amazing episode planned for today. Joining us is Melissa Joy, president of Pearl Planning, an all-female client-focused wealth management firm based in Dexter, Michigan. Melissa, thanks so much for joining us. So excited to talk with you and have our listeners get a little bit of your perspective and insight.
First, I'd like Hannah. I'm so glad to be here.
Yes, awesome. Yeah, so we will head right into the first question. We'd love to know a little bit more about yourself and your journey to get to where you are now in your career in financial planning and wealth management.
Well, I consider myself lucky. It was really serendipity that got me into financial planning. Way back, which you wouldn't remember, there used to be physical newspapers that had classified ads in them. And I was looking for a job and I had a liberal arts background, so not a specific, I'm going to be this when I grow up. And so I stumbled upon a financial planning company. And originally it was just a job. It was, moving paper, administrative focus, but I loved what I was able to do with people. And I felt like I was good at it. And so opportunities continued to present themselves. I moved from a one-person shop where I was the only employee to a larger firm in an independent broker-dealer world. Both of them were with Raymond James Financial Services. And in that bigger company, which I joined about a year into my career, I was able to kind of first focus on investments, and I got some investing projects. I did some investment research, and that led to the opportunity to help manage some of the company's investment accounts. Back in the day, we kind of rebalanced by hand, and it was based on the calendar year. So I was sending out a lot of letters and expecting a lot of phone calls to get authorization to invest. Around that time, I also got my securities licenses so that I could talk to clients of the company on behalf of the advisors. And I ended up working at that company for 19 years. And over time, I kind of branched out in the investment role. And eventually we had an investment department instead of an investment person only. And then eventually I was client facing, as well as I had some operational responsibilities. So I stumbled into it, but really have loved both the investing side of the business, and then for most of the last 7 or 8 years, I've been comprehensive financial planning focused in my work with clients.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, I know I saw that you had a degree in political science from University of Michigan. And I was like, I'm sure there's an interesting story in how she kind of got into this industry. So,
well, yeah, I actually think liberal arts is a great background for people in our profession. You're well-rounded, you're taught critical thinking, but it really is a story of good luck that I found the career I have. I'm so glad that there are great programs like yours at Michigan State today. There weren't as many back then, but I can't say that I would have found financial planning just by looking through a college catalog. I'm really trying to be vocal about the opportunities that today's college students have to get a degree focused in wealth management.
Absolutely. Yes. Awesome. Will you tell us a little bit more about Pearl Planning and kind of its mission and, your view and the company's view on investing and planning?
Awesome. Well, 3 years ago, I founded Pearl Planning, and I know that I was a partner and business owner at my former firm, but I had always dreamed of starting a company myself. I guess I found myself envious of people who were founders and people who started things. And I always thought, oh, it would be so cool, but it's never going to happen. But then circumstances changed, and I got the opportunity to make a change and decided. I entertained a lot of conversations with good friends. I didn't do a very extensive job search, but I did have a lot of friends in the financial planning community and the investment community who gave me options, but I really wanted to go to that, something I started, and see if it works. And so 3 years ago we started, and in that first year, based on clients I'd worked with in the past, we had about 50 clients and about 50 million in assets. And myself and one employee. We were probably overstaffed at the time. And today, now we have 5 employees and we're hiring. That includes myself and 3 certified financial planners, 4 financial advisors. So we have grown. As you mentioned, we're all female on our employee side. That is probably somewhat by intention. I think that many people I know, friends in the profession, including men, when there's a woman that is kind of looking for an opportunity in her career, they're like, oh, you should talk to Melissa. But our clientele is not only women. Sometimes we're often making that correction. I love working with men as well, and a lot of married couples, heterosexual couples as well. So we work with a variety of people, and we manage about 120 million in assets today for about 150 families. Our mission is, we have 3 kind of core values. One of them is courageous authenticity. I think it's really important to be real, both as a practitioner and as a financial planner, as well as make clients feel comfortable to not just say what's going well or, kind of put on a good face or good front, but really say what's bothering them, where they have anxiety or concerns. We also are very focused on commitment to the community, cultivating community, and really being a resource. And so, that's the typical nonprofit type of things, but that also is the way we approach information on financial planning. So we have a blog, we have a podcast. We really work hard to make sure that our company is walking the walk about helping people know about financial planning. What I've found is that so many people need financial planning, but they don't always have access, and they may not know where to ask. And certainly, being a female focused firm, there are certain communities that are naturally inclined to talk about money, and other communities that they just don't have that deep well of conversation and history and legacy. And so we try to be a resource for all of that. And I would consider, this conversation is part of that, cultivating community and commitment to community. And then finally, we're also all about gratitude and abundance. We want to have a positive outlook, glass half full. I think over time, that kind of conversation point for me, if I were to talk about how I changed over the last 3 years, I've kind of altered that. I might change the goal to gratitude and contentment. So you don't just need more all the time, but sometimes there's the really hard equation is figuring out what is enough. But those are the three kind of core principles of the company. And then I guess I'd mentioned the clientele that we work with. So I told you, not everybody's a female. We have a very broad range of ages of clients. The clients that I was working with, that I continued to work with from my former firm, skewed older, but many of the people that we're working with would seem older to you, Hannah, but maybe younger in financial planning company speak, millennials and Gen Xers, so people in their 30s, 40s and 50s. And we work with about half of our clients here in Michigan and then the rest around the country. And a lot of our work is really helping busy families get their financial planning done, helping people who have never worked with a financial planner start to build confidence in their financial decisions as their income grows. And then more recently, we've worked with families and individuals with equity stock compensation around the country. So that's a really interesting area that I think will be growing in our firm. And then finally, we have about 20% of our business is people going through divorce, and we'll continue to work with them post-divorce.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. It's so inspiring to kind of learn about it. So I appreciate you sharing all this. You mentioned kind of, being real and also, kind of making sure your clients have confidence. So how do you, as an advisor, how does your team kind of establish that real connection with your clients or establish that confidence?
Well, I wish I could get in with a focus group of clients to make sure that we're doing it right. But I think that it's, I think in the pandemic, it's actually been helpful. We're a little more casual. We're comfortable on Zoom. For a busy family, I think that helps because, maybe one of you is watching the kids when they're home from school and the other is, at a company meeting or on their lunch break, and we can all three hop on a call. But I'm just real with them. Like when they say, oh, sorry, my kid's in the background or my cat or dog. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I've got a, 12 and 8-year-old. We won't be phased. And we also just tell them, you have a desire to get started. Let's roll up our sleeves and start working. So I think it's much less in our initial conversations. How much money do you have? Where are your accounts? Give me the dollars and cents. It's very much more, who are you? What is the problem or the concern or the goal that prompted you to schedule an introductory call? And here's our services. We have a defined process for our financial planning engagement. And so it's laid out for them in a way that I think some investment advisors, when people call and are kind of prospective clients, they go right into the weeds of the investments, which is very important, but you may need to establish credibility and trust first. And so for us, we want to see them as a person, know them, human to human, before we say, tell me all your details of, what's in your bank account, what your obligations are, how much money you make. I mean, we get that pretty quickly, but we establish that trust and at least initial relationship first.
Yeah, awesome. Another question kind of popped up as you were talking, but kind of, I guess, what do you think maybe the advantages are of being, a more female focused group, company, or I guess also kind of maybe what ways do you think that Pearl Planning has had to adapt being an all female firm?
Well, as we grow, I think I'm going to need to do some more communication to make sure that people understand. Well, I need to make a decision, I guess. Do we just want to work with women? I think the answer is no. But also, if not, then we need to make it clear that, in terms of our branding, which was probably skewed more feminine to this point, we need to make it more clear. We work with the types of people we work with, and also we try to be very inclusive and open. And I'm really excited that we have a much more diverse client base than I kind of brought to start the firm, which is something I'm really proud of. And I think all of us should strive for. Not only our workforce, but also our clients should reflect a more inclusive community. I guess I don't know some of the people that, kind of look at our website and say, oh, not for me, this is all women. But you'd be surprised at there's plenty of people that are willing to work with us. I guess I'd say. And there's a lot of people, especially women, who contact us because they're like, I'm looking to work with a woman. I hope, Hannah, that you never hear that women are a niche in financial planning or wealth management, because, we're the majority of the population. And I think your niche needs to be a little more specific than that. But there's plenty of opportunity for clients that are interested in services from a team. And I think that authenticity shows through that, we're just people that are really sound technical financial planners that are also comfortable. We don't all dress in black suits and try to kind of defeminize the company, but we'll come to you on our own terms. And I would also mention, I think that I really respect people that have a very specific niche, but when it's a niche that comes down to your profession, then what happens to the other person in that relationship? If the niche is, I work with pediatrician, doctors, well, I mean, in some families, there may be 2 pediatricians in the family, but in other families, there's not. So we don't have that very, very specific focus. And we really do try to be holistically focused, not only kind of in the dominant financial person in the family, but also in the person who may be a little more reluctant with finances or have a little bit of a less a money story that they aren't as proud of and things like that.
Yeah, awesome. You kind of mentioned this a little bit, but I guess maybe what advice do you have for females who maybe want to enter the industry and start a career in financial advising and planning and wealth management? I know just for me in school and classes or wealth management groups, it's definitely more male dominated. So I guess what advice do you have for those women who aspire to be, a financial advisor or planner?
Well, I'm so glad that there are people like you that are pursuing careers in finance. And there are more and more women, but there are also, I think, more and more men. So it's hard to change those ratios. I remember when I was doing investment due diligence early in my career, I would go, they don't have meetings like this as often, but I would go to due diligence meetings at mutual fund companies, and 100 or 200 people would be invited, and you'd fly out to the company. You'd hear from a lot of portfolio managers, and it would be rare that there were more than 10% females in the room. Also, it was primarily and still is white people. And so I kind of approached that. Sometimes it would be intimidating, but I tried to put on, kind of my business suit as my armor. And I would always ask questions. Sometimes they seemed like silly questions, but I stood out in the room, and I found that, people remembered when the woman who was, on average 15, 20 years younger than the average person in the room, and also one of the few women, asked a question in front of the room. And it would be about investments at the time. And then people would remember, at the cocktail hour, wherever, at the water cooler break, oh, what's your story? What are you doing? I kind of use that to my advantage. I met people that really wanted to be a mentor, people that were really interesting. I always try to get close to the portfolio managers to find out more. So I really tried to be strategic with my time. And when I would meet somebody that I thought was a great contact, somebody that would be great for my network, who may have had more experience than me, I always followed up. So I know, Hannah, we're now connected on LinkedIn. And I always find that if you can reach out one more time, so you've met somebody once, and then, whether it's tomorrow or next month or at the beginning of the year, if you can make one more connection, and sometimes even an ask, then you've really got some on your team that you could call in a favor for, that would remember you. And that formula of like one more connection, there's so few people that reach out after that initial kind of meeting. So that's one piece of advice that I would give you. In today's day, I hope, and I know not everybody has the luxury of kind of being themselves in their jobs, because there are still companies that they want everybody to be kind of, a penguin, and you might be a peacock. So everybody's kind of the same and needs to reduce their differences. But I think there are enough companies out there that are seeking to diversify their workforce, and there are more women financial planners nowadays. So find a place that's a good fit, find a place that's a safe fit, be strategic, and also, evaluate things over time. I think there's been points in my career where I didn't realize things were changing in terms of my dynamics with peers, that I kind of let my guard down. Of course, a lot of us women start their own companies in order to really have full control over your destiny. So that's, something we could talk about as well. But, find your community as well, Hannah, like who are your peers and your friends. And then don't be afraid to not only have, kind of your female professional besties, but I had a group of men who were similar ages to me, or a little bit younger actually, who are some of my best peers too. So just find your people, as well as find people that could be kind of sponsors for you, have a little more clout in the profession.
Absolutely. I think that is great advice, Melissa. I feel like as you kind of go on, you learn the importance of, how nice it is to have an established connection or have that work. It's that mentorship, that sponsorship. So that's amazing. And I'm sure our listeners would love to hear that. So thank you so much for sharing that. It's you definitely realize. Yeah.
Yeah, I would mention too, for most of the first decade, at least, of my career, I was internal. So I did investment research. I did talk to some clients, but they were not my clients. And that was actually really terrific experience. But I took that networking seriously, even when it was all just networking with other investment professionals. And I had a network both within my firm as well as a really broad network outside of the firm. And always, if I was the young person that was doing things a little differently, using a little bit new technology, people that were more established would be like, how do you do this? How do you do that? And if I shared, they really, wanted to help me too. So even if you're on the internal side of things, doesn't mean that networking role, it's not just for business, it's for your career, and you never know when you may need to call in some favors. So my network was huge when I started the company and left my former firm. They were really there for me. And, I owe a lot of people some big favors, and I also love them. It's great as a woman to have people that are going through the same things as you.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I guess, more specifically, do you have any, steps for those college students who are looking to, or people kind of out of college, those first, those early years in their career? And, what are some of those specific steps that you took that found to be successful when building your network or establishing those connections, reaching out on LinkedIn or sending those emails?
I would look for groups where you can kind of connect with people. So it depends on the person. It depends on compliance, which is a constant, very important part of our financial life, but sometimes a challenge as well. But I've used LinkedIn and Twitter, Twitter more recently. In fact, Professor Schistel, I've known through Twitter, and which has led to one of a member of our team, Maggie, joined the firm. There's also younger advisor working groups, use the FPA, and also just be looking for those really sharp professionals that, because they're not the top advisor, so to speak, then they may have a little more time on their hands because they're not like the star in a conference or something like that, but they really know their stuff. And I love the advice because you'll find wherever you land, there's always the people, you should be like this person. And I always find those people have probably built it either 5, 10, or 20 or 30 years ago. And I think I'm going to be looking for the person that's just a little bit ahead of you. So maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead on the career ladder or in years of experience, that seems to be successful, but isn't like all the rage yet because they're laying the groundwork for what's next. Reach out to those people, see how they're doing things right now. Because I can guarantee you the way that you built a business or built a successful career 10 years ago, yes, there's some core, kind of relatable things, but you're not going to that due diligence meeting I described. Probably you're going to be, probably connecting digitally, which, you lose that in-person factor in some cases. Of course, we're going to have, more in person than we do right now in the future, but digital means that there are no boundaries. If you found somebody who is doing amazing things in Hawaii, then you can reach out and be like, hey, we should talk. We have similar companies, or I'm really curious about what you're doing about special needs planning or whatever it is. So recognize that you have an opportunity with that digital divide being a little bit lower.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. Yeah. Incredible advice. And, it's nice kind of hearing it from someone who's done it and, can prove, it is successful. So thank you for sharing, Melissa.
Of course.
Yeah. I want to hop into another question. I know this is maybe a basic question, but if you don't mind telling me kind of the typical day or the typical week in your career as a financial advisor, or, what that kind of typical day looks like for your team.
Sure. So we work in a couple locations. We have our main office is in Dexter, Michigan, outside of Ann Arbor. We have a Grosse Pointe office with one advisor, and so one person is at that office, and she spends about half her time in the office and half of her time at working from home. And we just hired someone who's a completely virtual employee. So she's in Northern Michigan. We have a contract worker in Florida. So we've really embraced the, kind of hybrid work experience, which I think is working great for the way we're set up. It wouldn't work for every company. It also works great for our clientele because, like I said, they skew younger for me. And they also, we have adapted a lot of digital technology in our planning practice. So in a typical day, we have some team meetings. We have a once a week, everybody gets together on a call. We also typically, I have 2 to 3 introductory phone calls with clients a week. Those are 30-minute calls, and it's usually just me on the line. And I ask them, tell me why you called, tell me why you set up this call. They typically are setting it up on our website through a Calendly link. What's going on in your life? And then I will tell you our process. We have an initial call after that if you decide to hire us, and then we present a financial plan to you. You agree to a financial planning fee. If we manage investments for you, we will switch that to an investment advisory fee. And then 45 days after that, we'll make sure you're implementing your tasks as well as what other legwork we have to do, and then work with us for a year, and then we'll renew. So we talk about that in the intro call. I have 1 to 2 of those initial phone meetings a week too. And typically I would be joined by another financial planner on the team. So there would be 2 of us kind of working on the plan. And we do a lot of legwork in our contact management system to make sure that things are, we're staying on top of things. We have a system for building our plans. We use software, including Right Capital, Holistiplan. Our CRM is Redtail. We trade in Tamarack. Our team does discretionary investment management. So we spend some time that's divided up between me and Alexa, and Maggie has some responsibilities as well to set up our trades, make sure all of our accounts are managed. Pretty darn clean in the models we've set up. And we also have ESG options in our models. And then we're doing some networking, we're talking to clients, we're doing administrative tasks. So every week it's totally different. And the beautiful thing about not having a super, super granular niche is that every client's different too. They're going through different things. Some have babies, some have kids going off to college, and some are thinking about how do I create my paycheck in retirement? And we're here for all that. I love that variety. And the most important thing I love, which I can point to examples of every week, is financial planning is a helping profession. People have problems and you can provide the solutions. which is both fixes whatever the problem is, but it also really alleviates anxiety and kind of stress from a client's life.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Melissa.
And I would mention too, as a mom, I mentioned that I have a 12 and 8-year-old. I live a mile from my house. Not everybody has that luxury. And I used to have a 45-mile commute. So I have not always had that luxury. But if I need to pop over to my daughter's school, I do. Our team has a lot of fun. So we enjoy spending time together. And sometimes lunch is, kind of communal in the office. We run over to the coffee shop down the street and grab some sandwiches. So there is flexibility built into our particular workplace where it is, if somebody has an appointment, it's not like clock out and clock in. It's like, get it done. And then do great work when you've got your personal life, kind of the attention to the things you need.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sounds great. And you definitely can, just how you're talking about it, that the work-life balance is really important, and establishing those relationships with the other advisors in there and with your clients. So I guess this question is maybe, what are some strategies or the best ways that help you communicate with clients and making sure that you are having that personalized, plan for them?
I really try to communicate to clients where they're at. So there are a few clients that really want the wonky, like, investment conversation. And when they need it, I totally pull it out. I can be that, I can talk technical. I can talk about inflation or what we think GDP is going to be or what tapering might mean at the Fed. But honestly, it's rare in a financial conversation to be talking about that kind of stuff. So we really try to get to, do you understand what we're talking about? Am I using too many of the words that are kind of built for financial advisors and not for people? So we'll reflect back. Do you understand this? And there's also varying degrees of engagement based on what the client's looking for. Are they looking to delegate everything and just get it off my plate? Or are they looking to, make all the decisions and then have somebody check their work? So I try to understand the clients, where they would best be met. And I really work hard to use visuals and show my work when it comes to helping clients understand. So our financial plan presentations, I think, are the best example. And we have kind of a resource book that has a lot of visuals. If you are familiar with JP Morgan's Guide to the Markets, that's something that anybody could Google and find on the internet, updated sometimes daily or quarterly, depending on your access. We have some screenshots from there. We have some great materials from a variety of different sources. And within the company, we also use FP Pathfinder, which is a resource to help you explain different, it has checklists, it has explanations for different circumstances for clients. So we have a variety of tools and resources that help educate our clients. And in fact, like in our drives, we have a whole folder that's like financial planning resources broken out by different things going on with the client. And so we have some static things. It's like, hey, here's how Social Security works. Or did you know that people spend more in their early years of retirement and then a little bit less in their middle years of retirement, and then their expenses go up when they have end of life needs. And we call that the retirement smile. And so I'll show them the concept, and then I'll show them, bank data that shows that. And so we try to be visual. And then when we're talking with them about their particular goals and needs, then we'll get into Right Capital, and we'll have it running in the meeting. So I'm not taking static screenshots out into, a presentation. And I will go right to the cash flow section and show them, okay, look, here's your mortgage that ends when you're 75. And here are the taxes. Why do they change in 2035? Well, that's when you turn 72. And right now the required distributions start at 72. And so we try to show and prove our work. We really ask for feedback. Like, does this make sense? Do I need to explain it again? Hey, you should know that looking at a cash flow the first time is confusing even to me. So I also share that with them so they can use the software if they want to follow up. Not everybody needs to do that, but I affirm to them like, hey, if we need to layer this and me explain it a few times or do a few calls, that's okay, especially when people are right at retirement. And then a really important, I don't know if it's communication, I guess it is, but it's also just like a getting things done strategy is you need to break things out and what needs to be done, make it very specific, and have a date attached to it. So it's not just, hey, here's 30 things you need to do. And somebody, if you think about it, it's like, that's overwhelm. Like, oh my gosh, I got all this started and now I don't have the energy. I'm busy. And so, we'll say, hey, here's the 3 things that are most important. By the next time we have our call, you have got to update your beneficiaries. They're still your mom and you're married, and we really need to make the elections for open enrollment. And you had an old 401k in cash. Let's get that fixed. And then we'll have here's the things we should do soon. Here's the things we should do later. I took a lot of that from Sudden Money and Susan Bradley. She has a book and the Financial Transition Institute, but like kind of strategies to get people to get things done. And it's fantastic in Right Capital because they have a task section. So we can put the task in there. And then when the client calls in 3 months and I'm like, oh, I know they're doing something with their company, but I can't remember what, I pull up the task section. I'm like, hey, did you get those stock options that were supposed to come through in March? Because it's right there in the task, like we need to do this, and it sends reminders and kind of prompts.
Yeah, awesome. I love how you kind of talked about educated and getting the feedback, and your clients, I'm sure they're all different levels of financial acumen. So using that financial planning presentation and those visuals, I think it's ingenious. So I love that. It's awesome to hear. You also mentioned a book you had read. I was wondering, what resources do you use to help you as an advisor? What other those books or other advisors that you look up to, or blogs or podcasts, maybe help you in your career?
Yeah, there are so many. I used to, when I was, kind of the internal person, I was just always like geeking out on the investment things mainly, but like looking for those visuals. And I mean, so much is just borrowing. Hey, you're like so good at this. How do you do it? Like, there's so much room for everybody that for many people, it's not competitive and they love to help. Of course, like the number 1 through 5 is kidsys.com, I would say, because whenever you need like something really meaty, really technical, or actually really terrific on the kind of practice management, it's so many different things. Gosh, there's huge resources. So we're recording this right after the Democrat tax plan has been unveiled, or the House Democrat tax plan, I guess maybe we should be calling it, who knows. And next Wednesday, there will be a presentation at Kidsys. I'm a subscriber and I will be all over that. And that will help me to inform me about the communications I'll be doing with my clients. In many cases, I should mention on the communication front is that we try to do content and communication so that we can reach many of our clients all at once. And then we can follow up with the calls that pertain to them. That's really helpful. And we try to personalize it. We borrow, but with permission, but it really is coming from Pearl Planning. I'm still associated with a broker dealer for now. We are going to be converting to a registered investment advisor in 2 weeks. But your custodian or broker dealer often has resources. And for me, throughout my career, Raymond James has been a great broker dealer for me, and will be a great custodian, I know. So they're a great partner and provide access to resources. And then there's so many, just people out there that are training. I've been doing a coaching program that Stephanie Bogan runs called Limitless for the last year. And that's provided a lot of terrific resources for me about how I do things. If I were you, I just saw Hannah Moore, who is, kind of a huge leader in the FPA or in financial planning, working really hard to train young financial planners in college students. And she's doing this program that records client videos client meetings, and then she does commentary on it and would help you like actually see a client meeting. How cool is that? So not everything is how I used to see it. That JP Morgan Guide to the Markets, Guide to Retirement, and Guide to College is great and accessible. And then listening to podcasts. So like Taylor Schulte has a great podcast on marketing. I love his podcast. I listen to Kit's podcast on financial advisor success. Shameless plug, Pearl Planning has a podcast too. It's more client facing, but it's talking about different money issues, and that does skew more toward women. So just be a listener and then be creative. And I think that imitation is a great form of flattery. So borrowing and then building from there is certainly encouraged, I would say.
Definitely. Awesome. I think those are all amazing resources and will definitely be helpful for our listeners. So thank you for sharing.
Of course.
Yeah, definitely. Next, I kind of want to head into maybe a question of what are some of those important qualities or maybe those important characteristics of being a financial advisor, being a successful financial advisor?
Oh, I have so many opinions. So I think that you need to be real. The more real you are, the more comfortable in your own skin you can be, I think the more successful. I have a lot of preferences that, say that you should meet the needs of people as a person and make sure that their money is a resource for their goals in their life. It's not flipped over where their money is the most important thing and the person is kind of secondary. You need to be somebody who can get to a wisdom level. So if you can, and this doesn't happen on day one of your career. So I was fortunate to be mentored by several terrific founders of my former company. One in particular, Dan Boyce, I sat in with many meetings with him over the years, and he just was such a wise person. He had all the technical stuff down, but then he could really just drop something on a client that really could change or alter their life, permission to look at things differently. There were elements of life planning. He was trained by the Kinder Institute. So I always strive to, and it's not every meeting because sometimes people just need some basic housekeeping. So you need to be able to turn it on and off and not, everybody doesn't need to be like right at the top of the pyramid on Maslow's financial planning hierarchy of needs. That's not appropriate always. But if you can be that person who, when somebody comes and says, I want to change my life in this way, hey, can I start a business? If you can be a thinking partner and not just a technical financial planner, I think that is where it really becomes magic and just transformative. I also think you need to be competent on investing, but so many times nowadays, investment decisions for if you're focused on the planning side, young planners at larger firms is, there's a centralized investment department. It's like handled somewhere else. So it's okay to just be more focused on the technical financial planning side. Just stay aware of, is this you need to educate yourself outside of, what the company kind of provides for you. A couple other characteristics I think are really critical. Creativity. So, sometimes the right answer is not the textbook answer. And I tell you that because I've taken the CFP exam and passed it. But my financial plans do not look like CFP textbook, kind of questions. So the ability to be creative, in some cases, you don't need to go off, like everything does not have to be different, but when you're thinking through a solution, you need to have that critical thinking skill of, it's not just cookie cutter, the answers. And then you need to be decisive. So one of my pet peeves is a financial planner who just kind of lays out like, you could do this or you could do that. And it's like clients have come to you because they want to be Luke Skywalker. They want Yoda on their shoulder or in their ear, who's really suggesting, hey, here's 2 options, not there's 10 options. And be solution oriented. Like, here's an option that I think you can fulfill your needs and we can adjust it if you want. And you're going to make a decision as a client, but you're really helping that decisiveness. I think an effective financial plan is one where there's a lot of information, but not a lot of next steps. And without that decisiveness as a planner, where you leave room for the client to make the decision, but you really are leading them down a path that they should help them to be successful and help them to fulfill the goals they've described. If you don't have that decisiveness, I just think you need a different role. So I'm pretty, harsh on that. You need to be able to help them move forward.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't feel like I haven't heard that, the decisiveness term used enough, but I agree completely. And, I loved how you kind of talked about, you're there, you're being an active listener and helping them. What are your needs? How can we help you reach your goals? Let's work on that together. So that's awesome. Thank you, Melissa.
Of course.
Yeah. So now another question that I know our wealth management listeners would love to hear. Can you talk a little bit about, the CFP and your advice for passing that exam and kind of what went into it and, maybe looking back on it, how did that kind of help you? What have you learned from it?
Okay, I have a funny story about the CFP exam, or it wasn't funny at the time. I did my coursework through Boston University. I had I think my son was 2 years old, or 1 to 2 years old that year, and I was trying to get it done as quickly as possible. It was later in my career, which I wish I'd just done it on day one, but again, hindsight's 2020, and everything worked out in the end. So I did my coursework and went through those classes as quickly as I could. And I used Ken's training. And I know everybody has a different program that's a great fit for them, but that was a great fit for me. The night before the CFP exam, it was administered differently then. So I'll tell you, it was 2 days of tests. It was in person, in a group, like in a room, like you'd be in a hotel, like ballroom, and everybody would be sitting with paper, and you would do let's see, I think you did 4 hours on day one and 6 hours on day two. I may be wrong, but anyway, big blocks, 2 days. And I was doing my last study session. The test was on Friday and this was on Thursday, and I was here in Dexter. And a tornado came to town. And so during my last study session, actually a tornado came to my neighborhood. You can Google it now if you're listening, Dexter tornado. You'll see my neighborhood, not my house. Fortunately, our house was okay. We just had minor damage, but it was very shocking. It was like, just, we were all in shock because like we had friends' house, everybody was okay, nobody died, but we had friends' houses that they like called us and were like, I heard there's a hole in my roof, and can you go check on my house? And we went over, and it was like no second floor and no roof, so like it was a big deal. And so I really relied, when I went to the test, because I was still a little bit in shock, I really relied on the test skills of like, here's how you need to think through things. And like I said, it's your CFP exam is not an in-person live client situation. It is, you need to answer the test the way that the test wants you to answer it. So I really tried to just, prepare myself based on what the testing program the way it told me to prepare. I will say I had the advantage of the experience of, 10 or 12 years in the career. And so that's not something that a lot of people in your program are going to have. So you may need to take the test. Good luck. I hope you pass. But if you don't be discouraged, because I think, I had some extra experience that helped me with some of the answers, and you just don't have as much under your belt of having seen as many things, but that should not discourage you from taking the test again, passing it, and getting on with your financial planning career. I don't know how that test and that certification somehow magically on the other side changes you as a financial planner. Because when I look at the textbook, I'm like, it's very dry, but it really did. I'm so glad I became a CFP, and the process and the ethics and the standards that a certified financial planner has to live up to, I think really makes a huge difference in your career and the way you work with clients.
Yes. Thank you, Melissa. Yes. Well, I appreciate it. And I guess the last question to kind of end this podcast, but any general advice for WMA or for our listeners, or Any advice for someone who's maybe considering a career in financial planning?
Well, if you didn't hear my enthusiasm in this episode, I love financial planning as a career. You have to find the right fit for you. So there's very many different options when you graduate from your program, and it's a weird profession because it's not that standardized. So I would really encourage you to continue to pursue a career in financial planning. I think it's a wonderful career. And like I said, it's like something that I talk to a lot of people that are frustrated in their careers. I just do not feel that. Even when I've been in a frustrating, a difficult situation at a company I worked at, I never felt frustrated with the career that I had chosen. But do seek to manage your career and, work at companies that have a career path. Be introspective about what your goals are and your career goals, and don't think that what you're doing day one is going to be what you do forever. I mean, my first job was glorified. If there were, it was receptionist, it was, assistant. And the advantage to that job in a very small company was I learned to do everything the advisor didn't want to do. And so that was not necessarily not glamorous at all, but actually helped to accelerate my career. But never take the lens off of managing your career and your professional life. There are so many opportunities, especially in the registered investment advisor world, at larger firms, smaller firms, make your own firm, think differently, innovate, because our profession is kind of old and stodgy in many ways. I mean, we're not that innovative at pro planning, but I think it looks and feels fresh and different just because we've didn't kind of take our playbook from the way everybody did it 20 years ago. So just, be your own best advocate and continue to pursue things. And of course, I'm happy, Hannah, if you share my contact information. If anybody has follow-up questions, I'd be happy to talk.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Melissa. I can't even express my gratitude enough. And I know all of our listeners, are so happy to hear from you. And I feel lucky to be able to speak with you and learn. So thank you so much. You've been like a complete inspiration to me and instilled confidence in me. So I'm so excited our listeners, have had this opportunity to listen to you. But thank you so much, Melissa.
Well, you deserve that confidence, Hannah, and keep it up. And it's such a pleasure. I'm so excited for the podcast and the program and whatever I can do to support you Spartans, even as a Wolverine. I am happy to do it. Thank you.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you, Melissa. And, thank you again, Melissa Joy, our president of Pearl Planning based in Dexter, Michigan. Thank you.
If you like what you just heard, please like, comment, and share. This is Lance Mullen, producer of the MSU WMA podcast. MSU WMA, or Michigan State University Wealth Management Association, is a student organization part of the Eli Broad College of Business, located in East Lansing, Michigan. Our mission is to inspire and educate the next generation of financial planners. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed, please check out our channel on all platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And check out our social media at MSU WMA and msuwma.com.